So thank you, Roxy, for that introduction. For today's talk, I'm just going to begin with how BioHues was founded, and then I'm going to dive into how we navigated China's market as a young team. And then for the next part of this talk, Shawn will actually take us to the second part, which is to share some of the work that we have done in China. And today we're specifically going to focus on biomedical webtoons. So lots of comics in this UnCon this year. Very excited. So a little bit about my background. So I graduated from the BMC program in 2018, specializing in animation stream. And my first full-time job in the industry was at Scientific Animations. And my job function there was a creative project manager. And what that means was that I was moving between clients and production to create storyboards, to explain the science to production, and to get the medical animations to the finish line. So now I'm a regional director at BioHues Digital in Canada, but I work directly with our global team every day. So before 2019, being a medical illustrator was not a reliable career path in China because the projects were few and far between. So most of them went to freelance illustrators whose focus is usually on game design and commercial illustrations for product promotion. So at the time, there was a WeChat group of medical art hobbyists because no one was really in this industry full-time, or very few people were were in medical illustration as a full-time career. So in 2016, when I joined the WeChat group, I invited Shawn in the following year. And both of us are fluent in Mandarin and we can read and write Chinese. So it was easy for us to keep up with the news and the opportunities that were available. So that was really critical to us because by the time the opportunity came, we were there at the right place at the right time to catch that opportunity. So looking back, if we have started our business a year earlier or a year later, we would have missed the best time to enter the market. So a bit about our first opportunity. This opportunity came from Tencent, which is one of the largest tech companies in the world. It's a household name in China, but for anyone who doesn't know about it, it's the creator of WeChat. And their product WeChat has over 1 billion active users around the world. It acts as a messenger app, a digital wallet, and it's a portal to many different mini programs so that you can subscribe to news channels, you can book your train tickets there. It's just multifunctional. And in 2019, they launched this mini program that combines medical information with virtual appointments. And the medical encyclopedia section has articles on different diseases and surgeries. And the scope for our project is to create the accompanying illustrations for these articles who have been written by Tencent's editors and reviewed by the doctors. And at the very start of 2019, we first joined this project as freelancers. But we were quickly outcompeted by another vendor who entered this project as a company. So the freelance team pretty much disbanded by the end of 2019. And that's when Shawn came to me and said that we should join forces and start a company. And that's because he was seeing the bigger picture by coordinating the freelancers at the time. So it was quite clear to him what our disadvantages are as freelancers when we were working with a company as large as Tencent. And our client was happy to make the accommodations because we had the qualifications and we had the training and experience, and they were all attractive to them. So in March 2020, we just had a team of 2 co-founders, each working weekends and evenings on top of our full-time jobs. And now we have a full-time team collaborating from multiple cities with online and offline workspaces. Here are some of the surgical illustrations we made. But right now there are hundreds of illustrations similar to this from BioHues on this app. So as you can see, the surgical illustrations are quite different from what we have worked on in school. And that's because the users are not just medical professionals. They're not expected to learn about the steps of the procedure in detail with these illustrations. We had to make a lot of decisions to pick out the most relevant steps when we illustrate each of these procedures. And we also have to present them in a way that fits the reading habits of a mobile phone user. Earlier this year, our team also created around 150 illustrations showing the different anatomical organs inside the human body. And we combined 3D models and digital painting during our production, which made it much easier to create dynamic illustrations in a fast-paced project. And that's the first feature of working with tech companies in China, is that everything happens extremely fast. Time just works differently there. And whenever I talk about our experience to people here, they're always surprised by just how much work, how much the number of concurrent projects we have to manage, and the speed of our production. And obviously, there were a lot of challenges along the way, and we owe much of this progress to serendipity and luck. But for this talk, I want to just talk about how we navigated China's market, or the approach we took, because I find this to be a bit more useful than, luck and things that we could not control. Because with this aspect of the business, we actually did some observation, we did our own analysis, and we made certain decisions to really kick off our business. By working on this first project with Tencent, we bought ourselves time, because now we can sustain our team while doing the market research and decide on our next steps. Many of you have probably seen this diagram on the left side. It's created by the Association of Medical Illustrators, and it's supposed to outline the different career choices you can have with the skills of a medical illustrator. But this diagram actually does not reflect how the market is around the globe, or even just outside of the US, things already look different. In China, for example, the usage of medical and scientific illustration is really concentrated in a handful of areas, as you see now. So before 2019, most of, sorry, let me hide this. Before 2019, most of the demand actually came from academic research and teaching. So people needed illustrations for their journal articles. And after 2019, because of these tech companies, we see a surge of demand in public education. So why does such a big difference exist? The most fundamental reason is that China follows a top-down approach in its society. So when the government has a goal and a plan, companies and institutions downstream adapt to move in that direction. In 2019, China announced Healthy China 2030, which is their first long-term strategic health plan, and it's nationwide. So this plan offers many opportunities across different industries. And over here in the middle, you can see that one of the outcomes is that the country is shifting from traditional hospital models to new healthcare delivery models, such as internet hospitals. It also focuses on prevention and control rather than management of the diseases when the diseases become, they manifest as diseases. And the roles of doctor have also expanded. And what we do right now also falls into this category. And it's pretty obvious that our client Tencent has been moving towards this direction for several years before they launched their program in 2019. In general, with any country, hospitals are usually not distributed evenly across communities. You get urban areas, which usually have the more reputable hospitals with better equipment and staff. By delivering healthcare information and services through digital technology, such as internet technology, mobile apps, you can now connect doctors from the country's best hospitals. You can connect their knowledge. You can deliver the knowledge in the form of reputable, reliable articles to someone living in a small town, as long as the internet is available. It also helps the government to save budgets. In China, there is a national health insurance program that gives people discounted rates for surgeries and drugs. So by educating the general public on the most common diseases, it actually takes the pressure away from the public healthcare system. And that is one of the main motives for the government to support programs like this in public education, whether it's a digital product or innovative technology. So as you can see, everything from local policies to the culture to technological advancement can really influence the market and how it reacts to the services we offer. And just because we think we are qualified professionals, it does not mean that the market is willing or ready to give us that opportunity. So we really need to understand the market's personalities, be aware of the differences, and use our experience to adapt to the current situation. And we need to make business decisions so that we can focus on areas with the most business potential. And if we can read the bigger picture and the trends, we have a better chance of success. So to start off with an example, both of my undergrad and graduate studies were at the University of Toronto, and we were steps away from this high-end shopping district near Bloor and Avenue. For us at the time, all of my friends were saying that the #1 luxury goods store was actually this one. If all of your textbooks were brand new from the U of T bookstore, you're either rich and you don't have to worry about money, or you're just a first-year student who doesn't know any better, or you just enjoy the feeling of unwrapping the books. By the time the first year was over, people around me were busy trading their textbooks with upper and lower year students as if it's some sort of currency. You can even rent textbooks directly from the bookstore. And when I compared this to the book buying habits in China, I can see very different results. So to start off, textbooks and books in general are very affordable. You get sales all year round, and especially for online bookstores. Books are also mostly paperback. They don't have very thick paper or full color illustrations. What this means is that the books are not as protected to last. if you use them on a daily basis, they're probably not in a good condition to be sold at a high value by the end of it. Textbooks are usually mandatory for the most part, and you're expected to bring them to class. So the lightweight nature of paperback books make them much easier to be carried around. Because of this, most people in China, they just buy first-hand books. You can write in the margins, you can fold them, you can carry them around, and it's really not a big loss if you damage or lose those books. It's very much like IKEA furniture. You're not going to leave them for your grandparents because chances are they're just going to be discarded or broken in several years. And for anatomy atlases, the choices, the options were few. And the most popular one in China, used by almost all medical students, is Frank Netter's Atlas of Human Anatomy. And just to give everyone a more direct comparison on book prices, from a quick Google search, I can see that a textbook on physiology sold here can range from 80 to 190 Canadian dollars. On the other hand, a textbook on physiology in China is around 30 to 80 Chinese yuan. So with the local purchasing power considered, there is a term, the Big Mac index. This is what you're looking at. And the reason behind this is that a typical textbook looks like this in China. The inside pages are mostly monochromatic or just two-toned printing. And the pages are very thin, and you can see that you can see through the pages quite easily. And the paper quality is not glossy. It's pretty basic. With anatomical illustrations, you still get quite complex illustrations because the accuracy needs to be there. But for general schematics, you are probably getting these ones. And as you can see, people are just doodling over these schematics because they also find these quite humorous. The proportions are not right. People seem to be extremely strong or have really strange expressions. And that's why people just, like students just enjoy doodling on these figures. So if we want to find out whether this area of the market is viable, we have to ask ourselves, why do such differences exist? Because even now, you can't really explain what you do to someone. When you explain your job as a medical illustrator, you can't really get away with, oh, them reacting, you draw for textbooks. So textbook is a big part of how medical illustration in the US and Canada started. From a superficial and self-centered perspective, we might say it's because these publishers in China, they can't find medical illustrators or qualified people to illustrate for their books. But that's obviously not the case, because China has no shortage of good artists, but they're mostly concentrated in other industries like gaming or other entertainment business. We see that for these publishers, most book publishers in China are either in state ownership or belong to academic institutions in state ownership, especially those that publish textbooks. They're not privately owned like most publishers that publish textbooks here. And for these publishers, their primary goal is to support the country's initiative, and that is to provide affordable education to the general public. It's very difficult for the profit margin for these books to get much higher, which means that the budget these publishers offer to illustrators are just not attractive enough. The other thing to consider is that traditional textbook publishers in the US and Canada existed for much longer and produced atlases earlier. So by the time China had a real demand for these books, there are already many atlases in English that are available for translation and purchase. And as we know, the human organs, they don't change much over the years. So these textbooks don't get updated as frequently as something else, such as biochemistry or cellular biology. So there's very little demand from the local publishers to have original illustrations done for textbooks. It's no exaggeration to say that the golden age for paper media has passed. So now we must look at areas that are aligned with the current and future trends. One fact is in April 2020, the number of active mobile internet users has reached 1.16 billion in China. And this is where we think the opportunities are. And going back to medical textbooks, the medical students are using, in the latest edition of these textbooks, there is already AR integration built into the pages. Wherever you see illustrations of anatomical organs, you can see this QR code next to the illustration that allows you to scan it with the accompanying app and see the organs in 3D. And companies like this one, which combines real anatomical data and 3D technology, is what going to populate the market in the future with things like virtual dissection lab and VR surgeries. We see their product having a much wider application in the future, and we as medical illustrators want to keep up with this trend so that we can really stay up to date with what the market demands. And for the next part, I'm going to turn this over to Shawn, who's going to introduce one of our ongoing projects, the biomedical webtoons.
Thanks, Roxy, for the great introductions about Nancy and me. And also thanks, Nancy, to give a great speech on part one. But I think like everyone already knows like what BioHues is and what we are doing right now. So I also want to thank people who are joining to this talk today. So, okay, let's get started. So during the part one, Nancy already introduced several new visualization projects that emerged in China recent years. And one I found is really fascinating to me is the Webtoon. So I prefer to call it a seamless long comics viewed on the mobile device. So today I'm going to share with you guys about the Webtoon development in China and our current Webtoon projects. So I'm going to play the videos to show you guys like what does the Webtoon looks like. So most of the educational institutions, government, and lots of medical companies in China start to operate their own social platforms accounts on WeChat or Weibo to publish articles in the form of long comics in order to disseminate the useful medical knowledge. So what is a Webtoon? As the video shows, it basically is a continuous long comics and currently has two formats. One is vertical and another one is horizontal layout. But apparently more popular one is the vertical layout because most of the people just use one single hand to hold the cell phone. So they both work and users will just like either scroll down or scroll right to finish the reading. And they can either click the sum up button or bookmark it and share to their friends. Then those platforms operators can collect and analyze the data based on the likes and comments to decide what topics are going next. So people actually love it since the language and visuals used in those articles are pretty straightforward. And accurately speaking, our target audiences are those like general public. So, for example, here, if I want to show the process of the tooth extractions to my friends, both in the comic styles or a surgical illustration style, they will definitely pick the comics. This is because the comics has an interesting and user-friendly storyline to help them to stay focused and to understand those like new concepts. The second important thing is that most of the people prefer to stay on the article only within a short period of time and immediately jump to the next one. So which is sad because like most of the time they can't digest all the contents and directly skip those contents. But this is the truth, unfortunately. So articles with tons of the text are usually hard to read. In other words, our users don't have patience. So instead, if you explain the medical knowledge that are all pictures with those like short explanation texts, users only use less than 10 minutes to browse the whole comics, and they indeed can get some useful fragmented information within this short time window. So Webtoon actually break down the communication barrier and is a good tool to spread those like medical knowledge. So I would say like there are 3 factors that can make the Webtoon grow super fast in China. Cheap data plans, uninterrupted service coverage, and people who want to find a good way to simply just kill time. So here's a picture on the top showing my mom sitting on sofa and browsing the web contents to kill her week time. She's already retired like 10 years old and 10 years ago and don't need to worry about the commute time. But for those like young people, unfortunately, this is what happens every day in subway in China. All the young people hold their phones all the times. From what I know, most of them need to spend an hour to reach their office. But luckily, the service coverage is relatively good in China, and the monthly data plan is affordable for them. As you remember, I took a subway from the base station to North York Center stations. There's a big chunk of time that I cannot receive the subway signals. But I mean, like in China, it's luckily the service pretty good, and people can just like read their cell phone like all the time and to see the everyday's news or like videos, etc. So they just like keep refreshing the app to watch different new information until they reach their office. That sounds pretty crazy. So we all know that people are heavily rely on this electronic device, and we start to have some new ideas. So actually, our Webtoon project is like an evolutionary process. We start from a really simple short comics to a long Webtoon, and eventually we got an opportunity to do the comics series. So let's begin our story. Medical comics is not so well developed in China. Plus, we already create hundreds of sim-style medical illustrations for Tencent. We just like feel really pretty tired, and we want to just like try something new. So when I moved back to China, I met our like art director Ten in Shanghai, and we had a really good like conversations about the medical comics. And he hosts so about a little bit about his like a background. So he holds a fine art degree and have many like talented ideas on comics designs. So we decided to ask our clients to give us like an opportunities to use comics to tell our medical story. So our first project that we got from our client is a short article from New England Journal of Medicine talking about a new drug to treat esophagus cancer. Our traditional way to create this illustration may be a mechanism illustration or traditional like a cellular molecular illustrations that might not be suitable for the lay audience. So we want to change our logic to turn this into a more like a straightforward kind of illustration such as the comics. So here I use an analogy, for example, to turn the immune cells into the securities, as well as the tumor cells with a mask trying to escape from the inspection. Then our new drug illustrated as a green X-ray glasses come to play the role, help the immune cells to identify the tumors. So after I finished this sketch and handed to Ten, our director, he created these beautiful render pieces and to receive the sum up from our client. And this is our first experiment and it's a C. Then our client refer us to their Webtoon team. They do have like a Webtoon team to create, to write the articles like every week, and let other like art team to help them to produce those Webtoons. And we are joining to their teams as well. So the true Webtoon production experience actually began. Different from the short New England Journal of Medicine journal articles, long comics requires a complete script, just like how we make the medical animations. And these scripts are provided by our clients, and we are doing all the like art part. So here, as you guys can see, this is the script provided by our client. But they're not really good enough because like all the information is a little bit messy. And also the order of the stories sometimes are not really clear. So we need to do additional work on background research, such as on the medicine and history, and then gather those like reference materials, reduce the text, the script text, reorganize the story orders, and then communicate those like materials with our render team to make sure they are fully understand the whole story. Remember, our art teams, they don't have any like a background knowledge, which is hard, but they did a really good job on this. So I still remember we worked pretty late at these days to have like several meetings on the discussion of the storyboard as well as the content accuracy. The outcome is pretty good. Our client and audience gave us many like a positive feedback on our first Webtoons. And after this talk, I will show you guys our like a first available Webtoon on our website. So guys, you can just like type the website and then to check our like first Webtoon. As you can see, we do a lot of like a background research on the medical aspects and the historical aspects to just like want to make sure our Webtoon is like pretty accurate. And when we are doing these projects, we need to have some like visual tricks to make our Webtoon looks more professional. So one single Webtoon consists of over like 20 mobile screens of illustrations. And when we are thinking about the layout designs, the first thing we need to pay attention to is that we need to create those like smooth transitions between the screens, because like those like comics are not like separate to each other. They're pretty like continuous from the beginning to the end. So as you can see, this is the screen 1 and this is screen 2, and we have like several like really smooth transitions between those screens. And the second things we want to pay attention to is the visual focus. So this visual focus need to locate exactly at the center of the screen to avoid any information loss cut by other adjacent screens. We also tried many different visual strategies to make our stories look more attractive and trustworthy. So here are the So we invited a really well-known doctors and use her portrait to explain the disease. So this will make the comics a more reliable learning resources. And we realized that the audience love it and want to trust these Webtoons, the contents of the Webtoons. So after we collaboration with our clients for months, one day our client contacted us and started to plan a comic series, which is super excited. Since later on, they will plan to convert those like still comics into like a TV animation series. It's just like a working cells or other like a pretty famous like a animation series. So which also means this is definitely harder for me and harder for our teams and a huge challenge to us. And our client only gives us a rough direction of the stories. So we need to finalize those stories by ourselves. And most importantly, we need to design those characters. So as you can see on the screens, we have different iterations of the characters. First one, second one, third one, and they all looks like a little bit differently. And also we have like special designs for the opening and the ending of each of the episodes. And we also choose the horizontal layout because it's more convenient for the later animation designs. And here is the finalized version of the main character designs. It looks a little bit funny. So talk about a little bit about this story. So this comic series is talk about the history of medicines and how our main character showing here travels back to the old ages and uncover these historical mystery diseases. So I'm like, oh man, I learned history of medicine courses at U of T like a while back ago, and this is definitely my expertise. I know a lot about the history of medicine. So I start to contact Ken and see and start to build this like mind map for each of the episodes. So I just like search the books, the resources.
We may have just a short interruption. We'll give it a minute. Shawn, if you can hear me, we've lost you.
So our audience will think this is a continuous series instead of independent stories.
Hi, Shawn.
And
I think we missed the last bit of your talk because you froze for a little bit. Could you please go back just?
Oh, sorry.
To the previous slide?
These slides?
The slide was the design of the story.
The mind map, I think.
The mind map, yes.
Oh, the mind map. Okay, I will just start from there.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just restart this part again. Okay, so actually, after I learned that the main topic of this story is the history of medicine, I get like pretty excited because I took a lot of course at U of T's about the history of medicines, and I'm definitely like, this is my expertise. So I started to contact our like production team and Nancy's to just like all together to create this like mind map, gather the references from different places such as website, books, and watch all the like YouTube videos and listen to all the podcasts, and to make sure like this all the contents are accurate and the story flows like really well. And we already create like several episodes, and there are 5 in total. And here's the example of the episode 1, and you can see like there's the opening and the closing for each of the episodes. And actually, like when we designed this character, we put a growth curve from the beginning to the end, which means our like main character is not immutable. He will learn new things after every episode and grow up gradually by learning those like historical diseases. So our audience will think this is a continuous series instead of several like independent stories. So we already finished, but and we still doing the cholera. And here's some like pictures I took from my office. I bought a lot of books about the history of medicine. And we also searched on different websites to gather those like background information. Even video games are useful. I found the games Assassin's Creed, they have versions that match what we are going to talk in the cholera episodes. Would people keep coming in? Okay. And I also love to collect those costumes, like the Flag Doctor mask, and become even crazier when I wear them. And yeah, I just want to spend more time to creating and designing those stories. I need to merge myself into the story and then to think about all the storyboard and the visuals. So after that, we also trying to write our own articles, because like remember, like I talked that previously, our clients provide those articles for us to create those like webtoons, but we also want to create our own like script. So this one is about why some people love the food you hate. And it explains how our brain store different flavors. So I can imagine, like, if I send these articles to our production teams, they will create a really beautiful like webtoons like later. At the end of the talk, I will list some future perspectives that I think are important for the medical comics development. So here's some examples, such as the Japanese comics working cells, both in printed version or TV shows formats. We can also develop something like that because like they can attract like more general audience to learn about the medical knowledge. We can also try to build some medical video games to educate the gamers or apply this concept to the metaverse, such as the VR and VR. So this is the end of my talk. Thank you very much. And let me know if you have any questions. And at the end of this talk, don't forget to go to our website and check our first available webtoons talking about the tooth extractions.